Welcome back to the Rad Sim YouTube channel. If you like this content, please give this video a like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Thanks.
So we've got Dougal on one side and on the other side,
Nicholas O'Brien on Bant. So we're going to have a look at this Bant list. And oh my lord, is this the fabled food deck?
Is this food mid-range? We've heard
This
so
is
much.
food mid-range.
We've heard so much about this deck.
Oh, baby.
When the event to end all events was announced, I spent a long time soul searching for the deck that I would play. I'd be unsurprised if that was the feeling that everybody in the room had felt at some point leading up to the event. 2 months before the event, I had settled on the deck of my choice, lands. As you can see here, I handed in a bunch of my reserve list cards for a tabernacle and I was on my way. I had great results at weeklies as well. I had multiple 4-0s in multiple stores and even got my first top 8 at the Rad Sim Invitational Qualifier. I was feeling pretty confident that this is the deck that I would bring to the event to end all events. Then, JD's birthday happened. The very person who convinced me to play Food Midrange when I was new to the format was returning to the deck to celebrate. And the result? JD did not bring Hot and Moldy Oils this time. They brought Food Midrange. That's right, JD, one of the progenitors of the deck and the person who actually convinced me to play it back when I was new to the format. They've decided to pick up the deck, they brought a bunch of cards, and they converted a 3-0 on their own birthday. I mean, there's no better story than this. Talking candidly as well, I love the deck. I've been brewing in this space for a long time. Even when I was playing lands and testing with lands, I still loved food and would often talk about it. Compounding on this fact as well was the news that the event would be open deck list. I discussed this with my fellow Radnor's team members and we all agreed that there would probably be some EV involved in your opponent picking up your deck list and not knowing a single card on it. I mean, have a look at this mess. Lastly, a poll was posted into the Rad Sim Discord server, asking if I should play Food Midrange in Sydney. And the results speak for themselves. I had to do it. For the culture. There you go, video. Nathan Smell walking up. This man's about to win a Lotus. We met up on Thursday morning. Our 6:45 flight had us rolling into Sydney at 8 AM. We arrived at our hotel at 8:30, way before check-in, and naturally, with our extra time, we played Magic. We jammed Popper and Pre-Modern. We also played a lot of Highlander, deciding on what our final 75s would look like for Saturday, discussing the meta, and even a couple of visits from other Highlander players. Here's Carl showing me his sideboard, notably adding a Tiger and a Deadpool to his deck to break up the mid-range meta. I also made Carl this sweet Spider-Ham altar, turning it into a Marit token for him, so that he could play it on the weekend. Nathan was going to be playing in the Invitational on the following day, so we decided to get some rest around 10 PM so that we could cheer on our boy. It's currently 10:16 PM. We landed at 8, well we got into the hotel at 8:30 and we've been testing, not really testing, we've just been playing Magic. We played like Pre-Modern, Popper. We did everything and now I'm finally going back to sleep. To go to gym tomorrow and jam some Mr. Booster 2. Should be sick. We arrived at the hall nice and early to peruse the collection of cards that Pat had for sale. I got to pick myself up a sweet addition to my pre-modern rock deck, finishing off my old foil signed Cabal Therapy collection. I also did a coin flip with Cull on whether I'd buy this sick OG foil Tanglewire and well, I lost that coin flip and I was forced to buy it. At lunchtime I went to the gym, got a quick session in and the team did a Mystery Booster 2 draft. Kixin was able to get the 3-0, making him the best Team Radnor's player on the day. The night ended with Nathan in the top 4 of the qualifier event, losing to Richard on Storm. Everybody clap. No, but seriously, congrats to Richard and Brennan for securing 2nd and 1st place respectively. This is a great result for Victorians and the Plenty of Games dojo.
Hello. Welcome to the event to end all events. We are in sunny Hurstville. I'm Dylan Brown.
And I'm Ian.
And yeah, we are out here with 310 players at last check, battling out for a Black Lotus for first prize.
Absolutely. The biggest Highlander event I believe we've ever had here in Australia, which is very exciting.
I genuinely think it's the biggest event we've ever had in Australia, full stop. Like, money-wise, this is by far the biggest event we've ever had since, I think, the Pro Tour back in like 2002, 2003. But look, November 15 is going to go down in history as one of the biggest events of all time.
310 players gathered for this event. To make day 2, I would need to convert to a 5-3 record with Food Midrange. My plan? Dodge the colorless decks like Bots and Eldrazi, and pair into my best matchups, mid-range decks like Grixis and Jund. Naturally though, this plan was flawed. My match 1 opponent was Ryan on Shops. In game 1, I Spring Hunt and 2 Goat and Ocelot Pride, and ate a food, so that I could move to my end step without having to attack, creating multiple Ocelot Prides. I was able to convert from that position by making heinous amounts of cats every turn and every end step to go around Ryan's huge creatures until he conceded. In game 2, I started the game with a Tameo. I was able to flip it early and block or remove Ryan's creatures until I could ultimate Tameo. From there, I drew half my deck. I played out a bunch of cheap creatures like Guide of Souls and Gilded Goose to turn on my Gaia's Cradle for a big win on the next turn. Ryan conceded shortly after. 2-0 Food Midrange. Match 2 was against Chris on Eldrazi. Game 1 was very back and forward. An early Tangle Wire from me allowed me to hold Chris down while I could sneak in some chip damage and develop my board with Samwise Gamgee. Chris though was able to stabilize. He slammed a Khan the Great Creator and fetched an ensnaring bridge from his sideboard after I had landed a Kappa Cannoneer. My only outs to that were Beseiju, Static Prison, and Expedition Map. I wasn't able to draw any of those before Chris was able to stabilize and kill me. In game 2 we didn't have a lot of time. I was able to get ahead early on board with an aggressive Urza Saga to represent lethal in 2 turns. However, we were on turn 5 at this point, and I wasn't able to kill him in time. This game was considered a draw, ultimately giving Chris the match win. I want to give a big shout out to Chris as well. He made a deep run on Eldrazi and showed everybody that the deck is still good and still very powerful. Shout out Chris. I'm now 1-1. It's safe to say by this point I was feeling pretty demoralized. I told myself that I was going to dodge the big mana matchups, not play against them. And my first 2 matches were against the 2 decks that I thought I could never beat. I was crossing my fingers hoping that I'd run into a mid-range deck. And that's when I ran into Hamish in match 3, playing 4-color mid-range. Finally, a good matchup for Food. I broke out of game 1 super fast by committing to an early Urza Saga. I fetched an Expedition Map with it and then developed Tolarian Academy into an Urza Lord High Artificer. With 3 constructs and multiple Urza spins per turn, it forced Hamish to trade resources with my constructs instead of my creatures, and ultimately it led to his death. In game 2 I started with a turn 1 Mother of Runes. Unfortunately, Hamish wasn't able to kill it and allowed me to develop an 8/8 Banquet Guest, which could be protected from his removal, both with its activated ability and Mother of Runes. 2-0 Food Midrange. I'm now 2-1. I'm feeling a little bit confident and hoping that maybe there was a chance I could make day 2. My match 4 was against Nathan on Golgari Lands. I already knew him previously from the Lands Discord. His table demeanor is fantastic and he's lovely to play with. Shout out to Bugs. Game 1 was extremely grindy. I cast a huge Goose Mother and used Mother of Runes to protect it from all the removal in his hand. But he was able to hold it down with Maze of Ith and threaten a Marrowlage whenever he wanted. I Expedition mapped for a Caracas and we just played the standoff game. Eventually, I was able to create 6 foods throughout the game and then devour them with Feasting Hobbit, making him a 20/20. I attached Lava Spur Boots and attacked through Marrowlage whilst holding up Mother of Runes. Marrowlage can't block that Hobbit. Game 2, Nathan had me dead to rights. He used an Offspring Iridescent Vine Lasher, a Crucible effect, and Exploration to burn me out with his fetch lands over the course of a few turns. He made an extremely aggressive attack at me when I was at such a low health, but I was able to stabilize by eating a single food and trading most of my creatures for his Vine Lashes. This gave me a few turns of breathing room to make a huge Goose Mother so that I could use Academy to eat more food to stay alive. Eventually, Nathan conceded to my board state. I'm now 3-1. I'm feeling pretty chuffed at this point, not gonna lie. I'd need a 2-2 record to make day 2 on Food, which to me sounded achievable. But more importantly, there were prospects that with a good run, I could even make top 16 or top 8. Match 5 was against David on Abzan Midrange. This deck was brutal for me. I usually consider myself favored in these matchups, but this deck had more of a combo finish that was really difficult for me to beat. Game 1 ended extremely early. I mulliganed to low cards, and David mind twisted the rest of them out of my hand. Then he natural ordered for a Bright Glass Gear Hulk with a Crucible of Worlds in play, allowing him to assemble the Infinite Life and Infinite Mana combo. Game 2 I had David dead to rights. He kept a hand with Collector Oof, not knowing that against Food Midrange, the card's really not that great, especially when you keep your hand around it. He developed his Collector Oof and did nothing else. I began looping Farmer Cotton with Caracas and Gaia's Cradle, picking it up every turn and making increasingly more halfling tokens and foods. Unfortunately, he was able to break it up with a removal spell at the right time, and on his final turn he drew a Shield Druid. At this point my Caracas was tapped, and he had a Fastbond and Crucible in play. He was able to loop Nurturing Peatland by drawing a card to gain some life, to replay the Peatland from his graveyard, to draw out of the situation he was in. He was able to play lands from his graveyard until he could play and fetch a Dryad Arbor, and then natural order it away for Bright Glass Gearhulk again, finding that final piece, which was his Zurin Orb. I left a note for myself telling me that I need to mulligan better for decks like this, especially for a deck with a combo kill. Also, in Game 2, I was Mind Twisted to 0 cards from a Dark Ritual. Mind Twist is a really messed up magic card, don't forget. I'm now 3-2. I was going into the next match hoping I would dodge combo, but it wasn't going to be that easy. Match 6 was against Michael on Time Vault. In Game 1 I mulliganed to 4, looking for a keepable hand. I knew that I wasn't going to win by going over the top of his deck with my mid-range plan, and Michael's deck was almost all of the artifact combos in one big deck. I mulliganed to 4 cards, with some removal for a Time Vault in Static Prison. He played a turn 1 Urza Saga, and then a turn 2 tapped Time Vault, setting up for a turn 3 kill with infinite turns. I felt pretty chuffed with myself and Static Prisoned away his Time Vault. I had mulliganed directly for the Static Prison and I felt really good about it. But then, he untapped and played a Painter and then a Grindstone from hand, and passed the turn back to me. I didn't have the removal spell. GG. Game 2 was so grindy. His deck kept presenting threat after threat after threat, and I felt so far behind the whole game. Oswald Fiddlebender, Emery, Goblin Engineer, he had a Painter and Grindstone in the graveyard as well. There was also just a Time Vault kicking around. I was able to keep him from comboing off with removal and Oko, but eventually he was able to find the spot to Grindstone me. I kept a note saying that my sideboard plan is a little bit soft to artifact combo. I can't play Thoughtseize or Inquisition of Kozilek, and I can't really justify putting Null Rod effects in my sideboard plan. The food archetype is more resistant to Null Rod effects than you would think, but I can't really play one in my sideboard. I'm now 3-3. I'm on the bubble. If I lose another game, I don't make day 2.
So we've got Dougal on one side and on the other side
Nicholas O'Brien on Bant. So we're going to have a look at this Bant list. And oh my lord, is this the fabled food deck?
Is this Food Midrange? We've heard
This
so
is
much.
Food Midrange.
We've heard so much about this deck.
Oh, baby.
Match 7 was on coverage against Dukes on Abzan Lands. Dukes is a Twitch streamer and YouTuber. I highly recommend checking out his channel for high quality legacy gameplay. If you want to check out the full match, go check out the VOD on Bizarre Coverage on Twitch. Give them a follow whilst you're there. Game 1 was a bit of a mess. Dukes committed to a Sidecat Cub and a Strip Mine on my land to try and go under what I was doing. Luckily, my Gilded Goose allowed me to get lost his only threat. The map tokens notably aren't good for lands pilots with so few creatures. From there I developed Astropeth, creating foods and allowing my Gilded Goose to tap for mana once again. I followed it up with the Stride Hanger Automaton, turning my foods created by Astropeth into Thopters as well. My plan was to ensure I always had a blocker for Marrowlage, as there was a known Thespian stage in play, and the threat of an end-step Marrowlage via crop rotation. I continued to create game objects like I do, and eventually was able to stick in Urza, Lord High Artificer, who allowed me to cash in all of my game objects for mana and Urza spins. Once my board was large enough, I attacked Dukes and he conceded. Game 2 was a bread and butter game for lands. A turn 2 Crucible with a Strip Mine in play meant that I was threatened by a Strip Lock. I tried my best to get on board with Mother of Runes and then Felia to threaten Dukes' life total, but he was able to remove all my lands and fetch a Tabernacle, locking me out of the game. Game 3 was one of my favourite games of the weekend, an excellent example of a back and forward game. I started this game with a Tameo. Dukes played a Tabernacle, threatening to keep me from developing my board or cracking my clues by having to pay for Tameo. I responded to the Tabernacle trigger with a Brainstorm, flipping Tameo. Dukes only has a few outs to this, but he was able to find it by playing a Vampire Hexmage, removing the counters from my Planeswalker. During that time I was able to play an Astropeth who had started creating foods for me, eventually resulting in me creating an 8/8 Feasting Hobbit, which Dukes couldn't block with any of the creatures from his deck. He was able to cast an Invasion of Ikoria for 2 to get around this though, getting back his Hex Mage from the yard and removing the counters from the battle, creating Zalortha, an essentially unblockable 8/8. From there, I played a Peregrine Took, but Dukes was able to remove my Feasting Hobbit and I was in trouble. An Ocelot Pride off the top allowed me to cash in my foods for life every turn. In doing so, every end step, I would trigger Ocelot Pride, creating a cat and a food, and then a copy of each token I'd made this turn, plus an additional food. This engine allowed me to eat foods every end step to stay afloat, while threatening a wide boards of cats, forcing Dukes to fetch a Glacial Chasm. With Zerudorb in play, there was no attack that could end the game before we went to time and drew. Dukes conceded the match to me in the end. I tried to decline and concede to him, but he refused. Once again, I want to shout out Dukes. The lands list I actually played and tested was his. Playing against him was a pleasure, and I'm glad to have captured on coverage. Shout out to Dukes. I'm now 4-3. This is it. My winning in. I sat down across from Reese and we exchanged deck lists. There it was. Finally. Grixis Midrange. Grixis has always been one of my favourite matchups for Food. Food can heinously go over the top of any other midrange deck if given time, even through the interaction of Grixis. It was finally time to test my mettle. Game 1, I mulliganed to 5 on the draw against Reese. A terrible feeling. They started the game with a turn 1 Ragavan, which I had no plans for. I remember when they played their Badlands, I was crossing my fingers hoping that it was going to be a Thoughtseize. At least I could have some time to develop a plan, but no, it was Ragavan. The monkey's first attack netted Reese a Mother of Runes, which they cast as their second spell for turn. Their previous spell for turn? A Ikoria Steel Cutter, allowing them to create a monk and then a Swift Clock. I could not stay afloat and quickly died to the cutter. Game 2, I don't even need detailed notes. All I noted is that I outgrinded the game with Urza Saga constructs to create a Swift Clock with Lava Spur Boots. Game 3, I was now on the draw against Reese. I needed to mulligan to a hand that could survive a Thoughtseize or a Ragavan. Luckily, it was a Thoughtseize, taking my turn 1 Tamio. I played a Mother of Runes and it lived until my next turn. Reese played a Ikoria Steel Cutter but had no follow up for it. I was counting my lucky stars. I made an Ocelot Pride and protected it until I was able to play Peregrine Took. At each end step, I was able to create a cat, then a food, then a cat, then a food, and then a food. I was able to draw into Cradle and Academy, followed by Herska Sweet Tooth. This made combat extremely difficult. By attacking with all of my cats, I was able to spread out my Herska damage pumps after blocks were declared, to make any of Reese's blocks bad. I was able to push Reese from 16 to 3 in that combat and wipe most of his board by pumping up any of the blocked cats. On his final turn, he tried to dig out of the game by cantripping and stocking up, but all he was able to do was kill Herska, and ultimately died to cats on his following turn. 5-3. I'd done it. I'd made day 2 on Food Midrange. This was my goal from the very beginning. I was feeling accomplished. The months of brewing the deck, the days of testing and working on the 75 leading up to the event. Food Midrange had made day 2. We finished the night off with some pizza and beers, and for those of us that had made day 2, we prepared for more magic. On day 2 of the main event, I went 2-2, losing matches to Colin on Shops and Leo on Prowess. I was able to net 2 wins against Joey on Blue Moon and Matthew on Jund. In the end, I finished 59th. Riding that high, I walked over to the card display and handed in my Tabernacle and Mox Diamond for a very expensive coaster. With more preparation leading up to the event, I genuinely believe that I could have probably squeezed out a few more wins and a better result. But overall, I'm extremely happy with the result and how my deck played. If a deck like this interests you, I highly recommend giving it a try. At face value, the deck seems whimsical and stupid, but hiding underneath their funny hobbits and Krabby Patties is a powerful machine that churns out mana and game objects. I'd also like to take this time to thank everybody I met over the weekend. Everybody was friendly, and the community that we've created around this format is what keeps me coming back. I also want to shout out Felipe, who gave me a Spanish foil Gilded Goose for good luck right before my 2 win-ins, which I feel like must have been fate. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a like and give us a subscribe. Content like this takes a lot more extra work than usual, and this was more of a passion project for me. Letting us know that you enjoy this content will help us make videos like this in the future. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.